Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday or Friday, wherever you are in the world. I am here with Shiba Rashada, as always, to kind of dive into the deep end of what's been going on in the world, as we tend to talk about with what's going on in the world of education. And today we're actually gonna go deep today. Not that we don't always have deep conversations. But today we're going to dive in and talk about this epidemic, right? I mean, how do we give it another word, Shiva? It's of these school shootings. It's how many times do we have to say enough is enough? How many times do we there's so many of us, right? There's so many of us that are like, enough, like enough. And we're done. We're like, and yet our children, our educators, our parents, our families, our friends are living in fear every day, wondering if their school is going to be next. Not okay. Never okay. And there are a lot of conversations that are happening. There are a lot of amazing people doing good work in the healing and the recovery, and also in the working on prevention. There are a lot of good things that have momentum, and it's not enough yet, obviously, because we're still here again with what happened in St. Louis this week. And there is no sense to make of a senseless tragedy. There are no words for these families impacted. So I want to start a different conversation, or I want to join a different conversation. I'm probably not the only one thinking this. Is why are we in school? Let's go to root cause. We could talk about the symptoms all day long, and we can have really passionate conversations about how to fix the symptoms. And what I believe in my bones, in my soul, is that if we don't have a different conversation, in addition to the conversations we're already having, I'm not saying to stop those, we're going to be missing the point. And the point of getting to where this is a thing of the distant past is getting to the root cause of what's really going on. And not one of us has the answer. It's all of us together. My thoughts about my solution are just a piece of the puzzle. It's going to take all of us collectively together having these conversations and saying, okay, that's a symptom. How do we get to root cause? Right. And really asking, like, why are we in school? Let's get to the purpose of school. Like, truly, for what greater purpose? Beyond learning math, beyond learning science, beyond learning history, beyond the surface of what we're teaching. Those things are important, right? And why? For what greater purpose? Let's have those conversations. Let's have thought circles and circles of trust and conscious conversations where we get to say, for what greater purpose? For what greater purpose? Over and over and over again, until we get into these depths of conversation to get to the true purpose of school and the true purpose of who we are together and how we show up with one another in our communities, in our homes, in our schools, in our organizations, in our grocery stores, for the love of really, like, this is a human mental health crisis that we're experiencing. And it's time to have a different conversation, have a more in-depth conversation. The news media, there's a lot going on there, right? Because there's a lot going on in the world. The first article I read about the St. Louis shooting the journalist, I felt, did a really good job. And it was probably one of the most disturbing things that I've read, in reading the accounts of what was happening in real time, for each of these students, the ones that survived, the teachers. And if you haven't had a chance, take a look. It's not easy. It's hard. Sheba and I were just looking at, to see if there were any updates, and unfortunately to see if there were any others that we hadn't been made aware of yet. And Sheba, I think your comment was, really? We have to double check.
And that's the sad part, when it happens so often that, yeah, sometimes you do.
Yeah.
Which is the sad part about it. That's the sad part about it. And I, if I can, I'd like to dive in. So, like, why do schools exist? I'd like to throw this in from a student perspective, because in a lot of the books that we read in school, I'm an English teacher for those that don't know, the question that I ask the students often is, what role does school play in the lives of young people? And my students, most of them, the majority of them, agree that school is necessary for the social aspect. They, especially teenagers, because I teach high school, they feel closer and more aligned to their friend group, people that are their age. Those are the people that they are listening to. My students will say, yeah, the learning is fun, but this is where I've made friends. This is where I've created family by choice. And I think what we didn't talk about enough during COVID is when students were taken out of the building and they were at home and then they were learning virtually, the suicide rates among students went up sharply. My son graduated in 2021, which was the full, virtual learning year. And 2 students that he was friends with at his school committed suicide. And those are the things that we don't report on. Those are the things that we don't hear about. So one of the reasons why I think schools exist, Sandy, is it's the opportunity for students to have these social interactions with other young people that they wouldn't have otherwise. It's hard to just go out in the street and just generate friends out of nowhere. So I think that's one part of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we think about that social aspect, where is the curriculum that actually teaches human behavior, that teaches, positive psychology, that teaches effective communication, that teaches, and where are those primary classes, right? If we think about the things that we need in order to achieve a high school degree or a high school diploma or a college degree, where are the human skills? If that is the greater purpose, right, is one of the defining purposes for the students, right? Why do they show up every day?
Sure.
They show up for their friends, or they show up for their piece of paper because they should, right? And
they do show up for their friends. I will say this, Sandy, I think in elementary schools where you have school psychologists and school counselors that will push in to teach those social skills. So I think that there is a curriculum for that, but I think we do lose that once the kids get into middle school. So 6th grade and beyond, a large piece of that is missing. It's no longer part of the instructional day,
right,
like it is when they're, very, very young.
Right. And if we look at brain development, our brains aren't fully developed until mid-20s.
That's true.
And neural pathways are being formed, and neural pathways can evolve. There's so much emerging science in how our brains are wired and how we change and evolve our consciousness. And it's fascinating, and it's important, and it's vital in every aspect of life. I was just putting together the curriculum with one of my board members for Genius School US, and for a camp we have coming up on the 11th, where one of the things we're going to do is talk about designing your life. And these are sophomores and juniors in high school that'll be at this camp. And when we think about the components of it, is like, why do you want this vision? Like, for what purpose, and what is your vision for your life? And let's be very intentional about it. Right. And be thinking about using their inner genius, like their natural brain wired strength. We have them take the team dynamics assessment, just like we have the adults in the schools that we coach take the talent dynamics assessment. It's truly about designing your unique path. And when you can do that in a way where, starting in 6th grade, you actually have a plan that you've co-designed, not one that's mandated for you. Yes, there's guidelines, and there's things that need to go into it in order to give you foundational skills to grow into them. Yes, absolutely. And where are these human interaction skills? I mean, these are important things, whether it's choosing your career or choosing your significant other that you're going to grow old with, or have for whatever chapter of your life, depending on your views. Some of us shifted our views along the way from, 2.5 kids and white picket fence and grow old with someone. And, for some of us that worked, and some of us that didn't work. We had dreams. It's okay. I'm talking myself off the ledge. But to really be in this place where, I'm kidding with myself, by the way, let's get real, right? That's one of the things that I hear from students in the schools that I go to, and in the camps that I lead, is let's just get real. Like, they want the real life stories. Like, don't sugarcoat it, don't Pollyanna it. Let's be real and talk about our emotions, talk about our feelings. I think you were talking last week about, one of your highlights was the young lady that just shared with you because you were a safe place to share.
I've got that mom teacher thing going on now. So yeah. I know how to navigate it in a great way. And I like what you're saying, Sandy, too, is like, students wanting the adults at school or just in their lives to get real. And then what makes this such a hard road to travel is we have to consider what parents want. Because usually for these real topics that we know kids need, those are the ones that parents generally are supposed to provide. So in order to determine what that means or how far we can go, it can leave school districts, and I don't care if it's private school, chartered school, public school, into a lot of legal issues, right? Depending on what is talked about. So I definitely agree that conversation has to change. I will say this, what I've seen post quarantine, since we've been back in buildings, the social emotional aspects of learning, that is a huge piece in a lot of districts. Really teaching students how to not only process their emotions, but how to articulate them in a way that they can get the things that they need and at the same time be respectful of others. So we still have a lot of work to do. I mean, obviously, if we're having school shootings, we still have a lot of work to do. And I want to say too, like, just like, for our students, things need to be totally geared for what they need. It's very difficult to do this when we have hundreds of thousands of school districts, millions of different schools, to even get a level of consistency, right? Where we say for our nation, this is the standard of mental health services that we offer, the supports that we're able to provide. What I will say about my school and our school district is that, we have 504 plans that consider students. So it's not only just their learning needs, but their behavioral needs, the supports they need in class for them to do well. And in our school, I think we have like 3 school psychologists, like with doctorate degrees that do this work, and counselors, not just the kind of counselors that are, setting kids up in class, real therapists. And our students have these beautiful passes that they say, I need to go and see the school psychologist. So that's an open door for them.
Yeah.
But what's happening at school B down the street? And what happens when the students from my school meet up with a school B kid down the street?
Yep.
And when there's conflict,
Yeah.
without that type of consistency, are they even hearing each other?
Exactly.
And I think that that's an issue too, Sandy. How do we normalize this for the state of education in our nation?
That's such an important question, right? Is how do we normalize mental wellness?
Absolutely.
And normalize mental health challenges.
Yeah.
And it's a growing conversation, which I'm so proud of. So many people doing this work, right? There's so many of us that are having similar conversations, and yet, we're still stuck, right? We're still butting our heads up against the legal challenges and the challenges that you're describing. For what's going on in our homes, and what do parents want, because parents have the first right of what their children are exposed to.
Absolutely.
And when you think about public education, you think about, then we go down the road and the rabbit hole of who has access to what, right? And now we have the inequalities, and we have the challenges are never ending. And the opportunities to show up and step up and give back and contribute are endless as well.
Sure.
And that's like, we had to start somewhere. So many of us know the story of the man throwing the starfish back into the sea, and someone's like, what's the point? Well, it's the whole world to that one starfish, right? And so when we think about these micro moments, these one-off conversations with a student here, a student there, whatever it is. I remember one of my first days, one of my first schools that I was coaching. So this would have been back in about 10 years ago, 2013. Yeah. Where am I? I don't know what year it is anymore sometimes. And this, I'm walking down the hallway, going from one classroom to another, and this young lady is sitting outside in the hall. And she kind of had her head like this.
Oh, jeez.
And I can't pass her. I need to make sure she's okay.
Sure.
She's sitting in the hall. Obviously, I'm assuming that her teacher knows that she's sitting there. So I go, are you okay? And she looks up at me and she goes, not really. I go, anything? Like, how can I help you?
Right.
And she goes, no, I just told my teacher I needed a minute to go sit out here. And like, okay, well, can I support you in any way? Do you need to be somewhere else? And she starts sharing with me the story of what's happening. And she just, and it was this time when, I had scheduled to be somewhere else, but what presented itself in front of me was so much more important. And that young lady being able to even share with her and have her walk away with, and it's because she shared this with me, realizing, obviously so, but kind of making the connection that our brains are connected to the rest of our bodies. Like, this isn't separate. If we skinned our knee, we would tend to it. So if our brains and our hearts are being impacted by something, it doesn't make it hurt any less
Right.
just because we can't visibly see it. And everyone is going through something, and every one of us who in that moment is feeling good or feeling, like they've got some extra gas in the tank to share with someone else, please do. There's a lot of social media campaigns that go around, like, that so many of us have shared, that say, if you're ever questioning whether you're loved, call me. Like,
Yeah.
and we're not alone. And there are times when we feel very alone. And it's okay. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
There's so much that we as adults are not okay about too.
Right.
And if we're not even giving ourselves permission to
Mhm.
reach out to our friends, our support teams, our families, whoever it is that we feel safe and comfortable with. And if we don't know anyone, then, there's always somewhere to reach out to.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's the biggest piece of what we can control, is who we show up as energetically.
Absolutely.
And with, as teachers, as adults in our schools,
Mhm.
being able to energetically show up with this norm
Mhm.
that mental health matters,
Absolutely.
and feelings matter, and emotions matter.
Right. Right.
If we just give space for that permission,
Mhm.
or at least starting
Right.
somewhere.
Yeah.
How many colleagues do you know that are not comfortable with feelings or emotions in their classrooms?
Oh, a ton of them. And I will say that I don't go home with these people, but I don't feel like they're comfortable with just feelings and emotions, just their own. Usually, at least what I see is that teachers that are not comfortable sharing with their students are usually not comfortable navigating those things in their own lives.
Yeah.
It's difficult to teach what you don't know.
Mm.
So that just shows that this thing it's cyclical, right?
Mhm.
Because what teachers did they have when they were growing up who
Mhm.
were able to talk to them and where they were able to feel safe.
Yeah.
So
And so I think that for what greater purpose conversation goes for us adults to have within ourselves.
absolutely.
Why are we showing up where we're showing up?
Right.
For what greater purpose?
Absolutely.
For what
Absolutely.
greater purpose?
Yeah.
I mean, I've chosen the work that I get to do in the world for the greater purpose of, living my life on purpose so that I can inspire others to do the same. Right? To really just live with this level of consciousness and intentionality to your choices, to who you're showing up as. Even if it's an intentional, I'm having a bad day and I'm choosing that today. I'm
Sure.
choosing a crappy day.
Right.
Choose it consciously.
Mhm.
And that's why I continue to have these conversations, why, I am nudging this conscious educator movement
Mhm.
and creating the playground where it is this safe space for us to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
And it's time for us to have them consistently,
Mhm.
not necessarily on a podcast, not necessarily, out in the public eye, but we need to be having them. And we get to have them as adults.
Right.
Even if it's not part of the curriculum of what's okay with the parents in your schools, as adults, you get to be able to speak up for what you need. Maybe it's not at work, maybe it's at home.
Absolutely.
But as educators, take care of yourselves first. Make sure that your mental wellness is a priority for you
Absolutely.
in your homes, in your working environments, whatever it is. That's one of the things that Stacey and I put together, my sister and I put together with the mental health recovery plan that we designed after the hurricane in Florida. And we're going to be refining that plan, unfortunately, to be sharing with schools who go through tragedies like what happened in St. Louis and Uvalde and Columbine and Sandy Hook and hand, right?
Yeah.
Where it's bite size for you as educators to really have an anchor and have some tools and strategies at your fingertips, of what you can do, how you can take care of yourselves, how you can show up and just have safe space for your students to navigate whatever they're navigating, because there's a lot there, no matter what the event is that is outside of their daily rhythm. And unfortunately, it's not going to be the last one. And, you know, a hurricane's not going to be the last one. A tornado's not going to be the last one. Earthquake's not going to be the last one. It is the world that we live in. And the biggest thing that I want you all to hear for yourselves, for your students, for your families, is you're not alone. We're all in this together, and it's going to take each of us to create better and to solve this together. We can't solve it alone. I don't have all the answers. Dear God knows that. But collectively, if we keep having the conversations, we will make progress. And that's the best we can do, is each day wake up for 1% of progress. And if all of us are making 1% of progress every day towards showing up for ourselves intentionally on purpose and creating that ripple of impact for those around us, we will make a difference. We will be able to get to a place where our students, our loved ones, our colleagues feel safe to speak up when they're not okay. And that's my wish. Sheba, how do you want to wrap up this conversation?
So I just want to say, I love teachers, and not just because I am a teacher. A special teacher of mine changed my life. So the beauty, even though we know that things in the system are all messed up, the beauty about what teachers do is they inspire children to greatness. We're living in a world where we're going to need technology. We're still going to need bridges built. We're still going to need all of these wonderful things. And teachers, K through 12, give what they know to these students willingly, because you can't see what that child's future may be right then, but they give it to them so that these kids have the opportunities. So I just want to end by saying thank you to all teachers, because teachers are some of the bravest people that I know. In all of these school shootings that we hear about, there is always a teacher that has passed away doing their best to protect children.
Yeah.
And the fact that you go in just to teach children, and without even thinking about it, to save a child. Teachers save children in so many ways, whether it be from a bullet, whether it be from mediocrity, whether it be, you know, from feeling unseen. So I just want to end it by saying, just thank you. These times may not always be very bright, but what you do as educators, we understand the importance of that work. And I just want to say thank you for all the teachers that help my own children navigate their way, because it's not always going to, you know, I can't expect to teach my kids everything. So for every teacher that enveloped my own children that I birthed, and that just showed them different ways to do things and different ways to think, I'm thankful. And for all of you out there that do this work, I'm thankful for you. And my prayers and my best wishes is that you and your students are always safe.
Thank you.
That's where I'm at with it. Thank you, Sandy, for having this platform for us to even talk about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One micro moment at a time.
Absolutely.
That's how we're going to navigate this. One micro moment at a time.
Absolutely.
Remember, you're not alone. And immense gratitude. I will echo what Sheba said. Immense gratitude for every educator on this planet in the work that you do. Yeah. So with that, sending you all much love. And yes, please stay safe and take care of yourselves. You matter first. You are worth it. I love you all, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.